Assalamu alaikum. I'm Amna Nazir, a web developer and graphic designer by profession. With me, I have Mohammad Muzammil, who is working as a Deputy Manager Sales in Greece, Pakistan. Namra Khan, working as Marketing Training and Support Executive in Knowledge Platform, and Mohammad Haris Khan, Managing Director at HM Engineering Private Limited. Today, we have come together to discuss the transformative power of sustainable development. Before we proceed with this discussion, it is important to understand what sustainable development actually is. By definition, it is a development that meets the needs of the present, that makes the world a better place for everyone now, without destroying or compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Sustainable development means that we need to keep three things in mind at once: social progress, economic development, climate and environment. First of all, we have to take care of our environment. There are many natural ecosystems that need to be in balance in order for us to live here. One of them is our climate system. This system ensures that the atmosphere is correct and that the atmosphere makes exactly the right amount of solar energy. When we emit harmful greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, we clog the atmosphere. This changes the temperature on Earth, which again affects our developments. How we produce and use energy is also very important. Coal and oil are examples of energy we may run out of, while wind, water, and sun will always be here. So using these resources of energy that renew themselves is good for the planet and can provide jobs for years and years to come. Almost everything that we develop, buy, or trade starts with nature. The smarter we use our natural resources and the better systems we create for fair distribution, the more sustainable we are. For example, by upgrading production tools to use less energy and water, and by offering eco-designed products and packaging that uses only necessary material, we will not only be reducing the unnecessary usage of raw materials, but we will also be saving costs. We humans are important resources for the world. We have minds that can create strangest and most creative things, but for us to be the best version of ourselves, there are certain things that must be in order, like having equal opportunities to education, safety, food, and medicine. This provides greater opportunities for us as human beings as well as for the planet. All these things must work together to achieve sustainability, and there's actually a plan for it. All the countries of the United Nations, which Pakistan is also a part of, have agreed on a joint plan for sustainable development, with the hope of reversing the destruction of our natural and social habitats and achieving a more balanced pathway towards the well-being of all. They have proposed 17 goals which all the countries will jointly work on to achieve global sustainability by 2030. A large part of the world's population is experiencing critical human deprivations and lacks dignified living conditions, while the others experiencing the high standards of living are doing so at an aggregate environmental cost that is borne by all. In the view of this alarming level of inequality, the challenge of achieving sustainable development is to secure human well-being in ways that are not only safe but also just. The present report presents a scientific take on integrated ways to accomplish the transformation of our world. It considers how science can best accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. 6 essential entry points have been identified where the interconnections across the SDGs are particularly suitable for accelerating the necessary transformation. The entry points are human well-being and capabilities, sustainable and just economies, food systems and nutrition patterns, energy decarbonization and universal access, urban and pre-urban development, and global environmental commons. The report also identifies 4 levers that can be applied to these critical entry points in order to right the balance between achieving human well-being and its social and economical costs. These levers are governance, economy and finance, individual and collective action, and science and technology. Co-benefits, trade-offs, and tough choices are the heart of sustainable development. As mentioned earlier, 3 distinctive dimensions of sustainability, social progress, economic development, and climate, need to work side by side to achieve sustainability. However, immediate economic benefits were actually prioritized over social and environmental costs. Such an approach also continually deferred consideration of the difficult choices that needed to be made. The present report addresses this head-on by adopting a systematic approach to sustainable development goals. According to the report, the key to implementation of 2030 Agenda lies in leveraging interactions among sustainable development goals instead of pursuing goals and targets individually. The world is now closely interconnected by flows of goods, capital, people, and information. These flows produce many benefits. For For example, through remittances, finances can be transferred from richer parts of the world to the poorer ones, and using the internet can give small entrepreneurs access to global market. On the other hand, these flows can also have a negative impact on us, such as inequalities, unfair competition, resource depletion, and environment pollution, and can present challenges for the countries that may be ill-equipped to deal with them. These flows interact with the natural interconnections across the goals, so the decisions and actions in one country or region can affect outcomes in another one. Therefore, advancing the 2030 Agenda must involve an urgent and intentional transformation of socio-environmental economic systems, differentiated across countries but also aggregating up to provide the desired regional and global outcome. The 2030 Agenda calls for eradicating poverty and other deprivations, enhancing human capabilities, reducing inequalities, fostering peace, reversing the degradation of the planet, and strengthening the global partnership for sustainable development. For that purpose, the agenda provides a detailed roadmap on how to achieve sustainable development goals. Achieving transformation will mean carefully taking into account the interactions between goals and targets. If the countries start trying to tick off targets one by one without taking into consideration these interactions and overlaps, there will be global consequences. For example, using coal to improve energy access, Goal 7, would accelerate climate change and acidify the oceans, undermining Goals 13 and 14, as well as creating other problems such as damage to health from air pollution, disrupting Goal 3. The success of 2030 Agenda depends on the cooperation of governments, institutions, agencies, private sector, and civil society across different sectors, locations, borders, and levels. Thank you. That was all from my side. Now Mohammed Muzammil will continue this discussion.
Everyone, my name is Mohammed Muzammil and I'm going to present the second part of Chapter 1, Taking Advantage of Technology. One of the most immediate trends is the rapid advance of technology. Indeed, technology can generate solutions to many of the challenges relating to the SDGs, including some that currently involve difficult trade-off. At the same time, technology risks further entering existing inequalities, introducing new ones. We can see the graph from 1985 to 2017, transistor per chip in millions. Another, and we can see the graph of mobile cellular and fixed broadband subscriber of OECD members and rest of the world. Adapting to demographic change. Demographic change is related to the population growth. When we see the different African countries, the population growth rate is going to be double by the 2050. On the other hand, when we see the European and Northern America, the birth rate are low, and meeting basic needs, providing opportunities, and enhancing the well-being of a larger and aging world population may strain social, economic, and environmental resources. Now we will discuss the progress on SDGs till to date. The Agenda 2030 is both a normative orientation and guide for action. It identifies and pursues development priorities by requiring coherence among all policy area and sector at local, regional, national, and international level. Since the adoption of SDGs, there have been many positive initiatives. Few countries start incorporating goals into national plan and strategy. Others set up coordinating structure for coherent implementation. 110 volunteer nation reviews submitted during 2016-17 and 18 session of the high-level political forum. Many countries issue directive towards nature, notably regarding climate change, land use, or the ocean. Private sector have begun to move away from business as usual model, for example by adopting and reporting on sustainable standards. Meanwhile, the mobilization of civil society and non-governmental organization in favor of sustainable development is rising. Where we are and what we can expect. To measure the progress, the interagency and expert group on SDG indicator has developed global indicator framework daily as below, that goes divided into the 232 indicators, and these indicators classify into the different tiers as per the availability of information and data. Tier 1 include the 104 indicators. These are the well defined with sufficient data regularly collected at the country level. Tier 2 include 88 indicators, and these indicators are well defined but data are not regularly collected. Tier 3 include 34 indicators, and those for which definition, methodology, or standard are under development. 6 are categorized under multiple tiers. Now we will see the share of indicator within each tier vary across goals. When we see the goal 1 lies 20% in the tier 1, 60% in the tier 2, and 20% in the tier 3. And same is goal 2 lies 60% in the tier 1 and 40% in the tier 2. Same we can see the different goals lie a different percentage in a different tier areas. The goal 17 is 60% in the tier 1, 20% in a tier 2, and 20% in a tier 3. Now we will discuss the projected distance from reaching selected target by 2030. Some of the goals are within the distance of 5%, some are 5 to 10%, some have the distance more than 10%. When we see the goal 3 and goal 4, they are within the 5% range, and goal 1, goal 2, some part of goal 4, goal 5, goal 6, goal 7, and goal 8, some parts of these goals lie in a 5 to 10% ratio, and some parts are more than 10% distance from the target. And for the goal 9, goal 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 are also in the range of 5 to 10% and more than 10%. At current rate of progress, several of the objective of the 2030 agenda should be attained by 2030. Those goals that are lie within the 5% range can easily be achieved by 2030. Other goals may also be reached with some additional effort. Those debated as being within the 5 to 10% of the target, such as eradicating extreme poverty, ending hunger, ensuring universal access to electricity, eliminating open defecation, literacy among youth and adults, and desirable level of expenditure on scientific R&D can also be attained with some additional effort.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Namra Shahid and thank you so much Amna for such a lovely introduction. I'm here to talk about region and population group. Well, individual countries as well as their groupings along regional and other parameters, they can have significantly different challenges towards achieving sustainable development growth. When we talk about challenges at regional level, we can divide them under broad characteristics which are very evident, like the very first pointer, it says Africa. In Africa, the challenges are poverty, food security issues, then maternal health issues and education issues. Then the youth population is actually seeking employment, but the opportunities are very limited. Similarly, when we talk about Arab region faces poverty issues, food insecurity issues, worsened human development issues, youth unemployment issues due to the conflicts in the Syrian Arab Republic and then Yemen. Similarly, Asian Pacific regions also face poverty eradication, and majority of the regions like South Asia region, Europe and other developed regions are also facing issues like economic growth, trying to provide water and sanitation issues. When we talk about individual population group like women and girls as shown in your screen, they face issues like girls have few opportunities for learning at schools, especially in the science. Women spends 3 times as many hours in unpaid work as men. Then labor force participation rate in paid work are lower for women than for men. Then when we talk about individual group as youth and person with disabilities, they are actually treated with negative attitude and beliefs and prejudices, and they have to face many obstacles. Similarly, when we talk about indigenous people, they have to go through ill health, poor education, destitution. They've been faced they've been often facing discrimination and exclusion from political and economical growth. Now, the second factor that I am going to talk about is rising inequality. Well, in rising inequality, what I am going to talk about is that the entire 2030 agenda is basically threatened by rising inequality in income and wealth. You can see the image in front of you. This is showing growing inequality and growth. Rising inequality is showing that, while the richest 1% is capturing 27% of the total growth, however, the bottom 50% is capturing 12% of the total growth. While The bottom 70%, they have the stagnant only 10%. And those individuals that are caught between both the extremes, they are facing sluggish income growth. Now let's move towards the Great Gatsby curve, the graph that is actually showing an intergenerational mobility and inequality. It is actually showing that how intergenerability falls as inequality rises. The rising intra country inequality is basically threatening the progress very broadly. It's actually affecting human growth, and it's causing slower economic growth and more fragile. Then it is causing less education and poor access to healthcare work. All these greater inequality is also affecting the environment. Now, how it's affecting a climate change, let's talk about that. Well, you can see on your screen an image that is actually showing that how human activities is causing climate change. It is increasing carbon dioxide emission and actually causing mean temperature, and which is causing the sea ice level shrink and elevating the sea level, and that can be very disruptive for humans. The impact of planetary warming are already apparent, and over the past decades countries have registered warmest ever year. All these things can have a negative impact of climate change. We can see that there has been water issues, like increase the level of species extinction. Then global warming can be exceeded to 3 degrees centigrade by the end of this century. 500 million people are exposed and vulnerable to water stress. 4 billion people are exposed to heat waves. uh, Coastal flooding is very common. Agricultural yields are actually reducing due to the temperature rise, that is 1.5 degrees centigrade. Now here there can be two scenarios for reduction in emission as mentioned in the report. The very first one is widespread adoption of greenhouse gas intensive lifestyle. But this thing requires a very rapid and large scale deployment of technologies that removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But right now, none technology as yet exists at that scale that is required to make an impact. Now, the another scenario talks about that what we can do is improvement in people lives must be accompanied by lifestyle lifestyle changes. That is, that you start reducing the total energy demand, yani ke that means while also reducing the land and greenhouse gas intensity of food consumption. How, see, this scenarios basically says that there should be a removal of much smaller amount of carbon dioxide, that can be managed with natural forests and land use systems without the need of help, and deployment of new technologies at scale. With this, my presentation comes to an end. Thank you so much.
Everyone, I'm Mohammed Haris Khan. In continuity of chapter 1, I would like to take start from rising waste production. Actually, waste or the byproducts or the outcome of industrial use or domestic use, or you can say from many chemical to chemical changes forms from one form to another. So the outcome will be in the form of gaseous waste, liquid waste, or solid waste. So gaseous waste is actually the first one, which is affecting the environment on the large scale in form of greenhouse gases, which consist of carbon dioxide and nitrogen. So it brings a huge change in the environment in form of climatic changes with weathers, or you can say rise in sea levels. So it can be reduced in many ways, such as efficient use of energy resources, or you can plant trees. Trees are also considered as to be the main source of absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen in air, which Pakistan is also implementing in form of trillion tsunami tree projects. So here comes the solid waste in the form of plastics or e-waste. So plastic is the main byproduct or a product which has been used in industrial use or domestic use, so it should be reduced to curtail the usage of plastic bags, or you can say efficient use of paper. It can be used on both sides to make it more useful or to reduce its use. So here comes the liquid waste. You can say liquid waste in the form of the sewage or the byproduct of the industrial chemical water, or you can say as a black water which flushed out from the domestic toilets. So it can also be reduced in different forms, such as proper domestic sewage, incineration, dewatering, solidification. So here comes the biodiversity loss. Biodiversity is actually related to the relationship between human beings and the living organisms, such as plants, or you can say domesticated animals. So domesticated animals are actually termed as the animals which are being used for domestic purposes, or you can say animal pollinators such as bees or sparrows, which take pollination or pollen from one plant to another for useful production of plants. So animal pollinators have been disappeared from last decades, that many plants have been disappeared in result of disappearing of, you can say, animal pollinators, because they were considered as the main source of transporting grains from one plant to another for useful production. So domesticated plants such as cauliflowers, weeds, pulses, and many other useful products or crops have been disappeared because of these changes. Here comes the domestic animals, you can say horses or buffaloes or oxes, etc., which have also been disappeared, and some innovative or you can say dangerous species have been generated in results or affecting crops in different ways. So here is a graph. You can see that how these activities are affecting our biodiversities. So here we comes with the knowledge-based transformation for sustainable development. Here are some parameters. So there are main three driving forces for them: balancing the economic, environmental, and social dimensions of sustainable development, leaving no one behind without any parity or biasment, or you can say ensuring the basic requirement for the well-being of future generations. So the first one we will discuss here is human well-being and capabilities. These are the six driving forces which should be considered on earnest basis for the successful achievement of SDGs for 2030 agenda. Or the other one is sustainable and just economies. So all of these will be discussed one by one. So human well-being is in the form of you should consider gender inequality, that there should be no biasment among male and female workers, or mismatches in education and skills, developing between developing and developed countries, equal access to health among developing and developed countries. You can come with sustainable and just economies, equality among economies for every nation according to their population, according to their poverty levels. Here comes food systems and nutrition patterns, that it should be developed as per the requirement of the public by the governments to keep them nutrited, or to provide them foods as per their requirement. Or energy decarbonization, which has been discussed in the previous slides, in form of gaseous waste or liquid waste or solid waste. So it should be considered on the earnest basis. So urban and peri-urban development, like urban areas should be developed, good infrastructure, or conversion of cities into smart cities, or smart cities into some digitalized cities. So it should also bring some positive changes for the achievement of sustainable development goals. So global environmental commons should also be considered, that each and everything should be commonly provided on equity basis to all the nations. So this is also the essential overall balance between nature and humanity as well. So it has been concluded that these are not only the forces, also governance, economy and finance, individual and collective actions, science and technology should also be considered. So all these four levels will be discussed in the previous, in the next slides by our other group members. So if you have any questions related to this article or this presentation, so you're most welcome to ask. So thank you so much.